We brought you this story some time ago of the fact that the government plans to monitor individual social media users like you and me and gauge opinion about its official policies. Now, the government had put out a tender calling for large vendors to come in and set up the software and set up the social media cell that the government will use to monitor those of us who use social media, find out what people are saying about the government. Now, what the government actually wanted to do, or what it claimed to do, would be to use that intelligence to perfect its official policies. A lot of people felt that this would be a way for the government to profile those who are criticizing it and then target them. There was one individual who approached the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, while hearing this case today, made a very, very strong statement. It said if the government begins to monitor social media, especially WhatsApp, it will be creating a surveillance state in the country. A surveillance state is, of course, a very strong statement to come out of the Supreme Court. The question that we're asking today is this: should the government at all be monitoring social media? And are we, like the Supreme Court seems to have observed, moving towards a surveillance state? Our phone lines are open, but joining me on the show right now, Kumar Sambhav Srivastav, special correspondent for Scroll.in, Ashish Dikshit, advocate with the Supreme Court, Ramanjit Singh is a policy director with Access Now and the co-founder of Internet Freedom, and Professor Rahul Singh is a policy analyst. We'll also have a member of the BJP join us on the phone line because, like I told you, Delhi is flooded and it's difficult for our camera people to, to reach our guests on time. Again, another question that we ought to be asking the people in charge of the city of Delhi. Let me start with Ashish Dikshit, advocate with the Supreme Court. Ashish Dikshit, very strong words coming out of the Supreme Court that we possibly would be moving towards a surveillance state. Do you want to explain to our audience what a surveillance state is?
Hi, good evening, Faye. See, as far as today's observation is concerned, this, I think, is a prima facie observation by one of the judges, but it is equally important to note that the same judge 2 days back made an observation during one of the matters saying that, anyone can forward any kind of message on WhatsApp and defame anyone or do anything illegal. Someone has to check it. This was said in regard to some message which was being forwarded with regard to the judges of the Supreme Court. So the judges do observe something, and these observations are very limited and they generally don't have impact on the matter or the merits of the matter. I am concerned about the larger issue with regard to the right to privacy which is being talked about. We have recently, the Supreme Court has decided that yes, right to privacy is a fundamental right. So therefore, if right to privacy is a fundamental right, it is not an absolute right. It is covered by the exceptions which are provided in our Constitution itself. The Constitution, one of the exceptions which are provided under Article Subclause 2 is, for example, law and order. So government can even infringe or interfere with someone's right to privacy if it is for the purposes of maintaining law and order. Second thing, this infringement or this access to someone's private thing can only be something which is regulated, which is covered with checks and balances. It is not something that unparalleled power or completely discretionary or arbitrary power will be given to the government or any person authorized by the government. So the law will take its course.
Hang on. Ashish Dikshit.
I would now like to come to
Ashish Dikshit. What we're talking about is the government monitoring social media. Now, this is not for law and order. The government wants to monitor social media to find out what each of us is saying about the government on social media. Isn't that true?
It is for law and order. Let me give you one example. Okay. Let me give you one example.
Okay. Go on.
See, in today's scenario, we are all worried about that who are these trolls who say all kind of, defamatory, sometimes offensive, sometimes things which are violating laws, which are disrespectful to women. So if the government or the government agencies have access to these accounts or these data, they can certainly look and find out the accounts which are specially made or which are used as a proxy to do trolling or to create a fake news or to create a fake item. So the surveillance, limited surveillance on the part of government has always been the part of law and order. even if you see in our local, I'll give you a very small example. In every police station, there is a beat constable.
Hang on.
Every
Are you
20 to
telling
30
me? Are you
houses are
telling me
divided
that the
into a
point
beat,
of this? Are
into
you
a
telling me
beat.
that the point of this entire social media communications hub will be to find out people who are trolling and who are being disrespectful to women? I'll tell you, you can find a lot of these people. And the women who are being trolled, me included, will be able to give you the names. So this is what the government is aiming to do with the
No,
social media
see, most
communications
of the
hub.
times it's a fake account. No, sir, Faye, you know and I know, no one will create a genuine account and will troll somebody and will abuse somebody. It's obviously a fake ID is created, a fake account is created, and on that basis the trolling is done. No one will be naive enough or senile enough to do something like this by creating his own ID. So obviously the government has to give some mechanism. We have to provide some mechanism, and then we will blame the government, saying that the government is not controlling the trolls.
No, but
On one
no,
hand,
hang
how
on, hang
can
on.
we
Let me
blame the
let me
government if
clear
we
this
will
up,
not
Ashish
promise
Dikshit, for you. This job that you're talking about, to control someone who is abusing women on social media, is very easy to do. Look for the word prostitute. When you see someone use the word prostitute, that person is invariably also abusing women in the most horrific manner. But that is the job for law enforcement agencies, not for the INB ministry. It turns out that this particular proposal has come from the INB ministry. Now, why is the INB ministry enforcing law and order? That's a question we should ask. I'm going to open it up to the rest of my panel right now. Kumar Srivastav of Scroll.in. Do you agree that this, with Ashish Dikshit, that this is law and order that the INB ministry is enforcing?
Faye, it's very clear from the document itself, from the RFP, from the tender document. It's not for the enforcement of the law and order. It was basically, I mean, the tender itself very clearly says that it is to gauge opinion of individual social media users about the government policies, and then it also says that then targeting those individuals with micro messaging to influence their opinion. So it's basically it does the agenda of the INB ministry, which is about communicating and also changing opinion, neutralizing negative opinion about the government policies. So it says that. And when we're talking about this tender, the content of this in an election year, it gives basically doubts about whether we are going to influence voters with this kind of policy, which has happened in other countries. And we have examples of Cambridge Analytica. So why exactly? I mean, for law and order, definitely there are other agencies which have been doing it, as I said, and there are other governments which have done it. But for about influencing opinion of individual users by gauging their opinion, by profiling them, is something which has not been done so far, and that outrightly out in open in the public domain.
Yes. Nandkishore Garg of the BJP joins us on the phone line right now. Mr. Garg, I apologize that my camera was not able to reach you on time because of the waterlogging in Delhi tonight. But responding to what you've heard so far, the fact that the Supreme Court has said the government may be starting a surveillance state if it wants to look at social media and WhatsApp in this manner, what is the response of the BJP to that observation being made by the Supreme Court?
I think Supreme Court observations these days are outrageous. Yesterday, Mr. Madan B. Lokur had said that you demolish the Taj if you are not able to protect it. They should be very balanced in their opinion. They are the supreme, and their opinion should be also supreme. I think the surveillance state, it is not a surveillance state. Regulation is always necessary in a constitutional dominated democracy where checks and balances are necessary, but our precautions should be taken for individual privacy. But it does not mean anybody can create anything and criminal rights can be, I think now these days are the child lifting and all these things are being created by so-called social media, and this should be checked. There is no license to do anything in a democracy. Democracy means responsibility also, and I think Supreme Court has exceeded.
Right, but you don't. Okay, so first of all, Mr. Nandkishore Garg, are you suggesting that you believe the Supreme Court has overstepped and exceeded its brief?
Supreme Court these days is overstepping in some cases, and particularly so-called two judges who are being I don't want to name them, but they in name of their social justice jurists, they
No,
are
but hang on. Before you go any further, I do want to point out here to our viewers that the views being put forward by Mr. Garg are his own, and the channel does not support these views. You're talking about a bench, Mr. Garg, that includes the Chief Justice, Mr. Deepak Mishra, Justices Kanwilkar and Chandrachud here. It's a three-member bench of the Supreme
Mr.
Court
Garg,
that
you
you're
should be
talking about.
careful. You are representing a party. You should not speak like a, like a person who has no understanding of law. You are talking about Supreme Court judges. These are not
But
laymen or
Supreme Court
your political
cannot
opponents.
name a judge. But yesterday, the observation by a Supreme Court judge or a bench that you should demolish the Taj Mahal if you are not able to protect it, I think it is outrageous. I am a law graduate. I know my brief. I know how to speak. Is it correct to say if you are not able to do this thing, you can raise it? Is it a proper wording, if it is true?
Mr. Garg, I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to bring you back with due respect to the judges of the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court itself. I'm going to bring you back to this current conversation and what we're talking about. You did say that, of course, this is necessary to stop lynching. Now, I want to remind you what we're talking about. We're talking about a tender released by the government to create, and I'm quoting the government at this point, a technology platform to collect digital media chatter from core social media platforms like news, blogs and forums, along with proprietary mobile insights. The platform will be deployed in private data center to integrate a database. It goes on basically to say that you will be following Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, Instagram, LinkedIn, Tumblr, Pinterest, Play Store, email, news, blogs, forums. The idea behind all of this is to find out what people are saying about government programs. What part of this, Mr. Garg, involves stopping lynching? Please tell me.
How the lynching are happening? Because of the fake news, because of distorted news, the print media and electronic media are numbered when they are finite things. But the so-called social media is infinite. And infinite things cannot be beneficial to the society.
Okay. So let me then point out to you, Mr. Garg, that if the government of India intended to stop the lynching, you would be well served by starting with stopping your ministers at this point, the ones who are garlanding the lynchers themselves, making perhaps stronger statements about the lynching and telling people that it's wrong and you shouldn't be doing it before you do anything else. Why hasn't that been done?
Already apologized. The matter should be ended now. Jayant Sinha has already feel sorry for his conduct. That is, the matter should be over. It should not be repeated again and again.
Should not bring up the matter again and again. Okay, let me bring in the rest of my panelists. Professor Rahul Singh is a policy analyst. And we have Ramanjit Singh Chima. Ramanjit Singh Chima, I'm going to come to you first. Do you believe that the government should be allowed to look into social media in this manner? And do you buy the justification being offered by Mr. Garg of the BJP?
Thank you for the question, Faye. And my short answer is no. I don't believe the government should be doing it in this manner. The point is, in our republic, under the constitution, whatever the government does is in limited circumstances, under checks and balances. On the matter of privacy, it's particularly important to remember that just a year ago, the Indian Supreme Court said that we all have a fundamental right to privacy. And they all said that any government interference on that has to be necessary, proportionate, in limited circumstances, and must meet several tests, which the Supreme Court will enforce and check, and other courts also will do, and which they're doing in this case. And in the case of the social media surveillance hub tender, remember, it's issued by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting with no clear legal basis. It's not clear under what legal mandate this is happening for. It's happening under no clear authorization for surveillance. If surveillance is supposed to happen, it should be happening under a law, under checks and balances. None of that seems to be happening in this case. It seems to be a pervasive 24/7 mechanism of tracking not just public domain social media tweets and posts, but also email, and that's very troubling. And that's ultimately the point here. If this was a law and order issue, one would expect it would be something that the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Union Ministry of Home Affairs chaired by Shri Rajnath Singh as its minister, who would be issuing it. And even then, I would say you need to have stronger checks and balances. In India, the law regarding surveillance is unfortunately out of date, not effective, and is grossly abused. That's something the Indian government recognizes, which is why, as part of a process from the UPA to the current NDA government as well, there's been a proposal to create a privacy law, which would also change and update Indian surveillance practices. For example, today, surveillance is done without judges ever looking at the process, whether when it starts or later. And that's one fact that even if you were to say this is for law and order, which I don't believe it is, but if it is for law and order, it should be coming from the correct ministry, and you need to update Indian privacy law to do that. It seems today that the government is more keen to spend money on social media surveillance projects than it is to actually pass legislation that would strengthen Indians' right to privacy. And that's what I'm really concerned about.
Professor Rahul Singh, do you agree?
In yes and no format. Yes, it should not be controlled. So the surveillance state is, if that is the sentiment, then it's going to be really a serious concern. If control is the mechanism that government is trying to build on, then probably, of course, it is going in the wrong direction. But for the security purposes, or it may be for the information security purposes, probably it is desired that we bring in the right infrastructure and ecosystem to protect the regulatory and policy frameworks which are developing in. I would like to build on a parallel of this, what happened in Europe and US, and now, after Brexit, UK. US is struggling with the security of information because it is dominated by market-led lobby. Europe is not having this kind of situation, and so if you go through what Germans are doing and French are doing, and followed by European Commission has already picked up, data protection is a law. Germany and France, there are 14,000 employees by Facebook in the world, out of which almost 14 to 1,500 are working only in Germany for the data protection and social media security. So imagine 12,000 people around the world and almost 15 to 20% working only in Germany, simply because Germany has created a law and it is working very seriously on its regulations and policy to protect itself from social media dangers, which is to do with the hate speech or extreme idealism.
Right.
If this is coming to India, we should not be fearful of it. However, we should protect our rights.
No, hang on. Rahul Singh and of course Nandkishore Garg, who's still on the phone line, I understand, with us. Isn't this exactly what Cambridge Analytica was doing? Cambridge Analytica was profiling each of us based on our social media profiles and then using it to market politicians. Is this the intention behind what the government wants to do? Basically, look at all of the social media, find the people who are criticizing the government and profile those who need to be perhaps convinced otherwise. Ashish Dikshit, you want to answer that question?
See, the fundamental difference here is that the Cambridge Analytica was doing it for a political party. What is happening in this case is the tender is by the government which is elected to govern, and you can expect something that this is being done in a very transparent manner. The government has released a tender, it has called for bids. It's not that something the government is doing in the hiding or is concealing from the general public. So this shows that there is no bad intent on the part of the government. Secondly, there was one of the panelists who said that in India the surveillance law are very weak. See, I can tell him that as far as the surveillance thing is concerned, the law is very strict. For example, if we take for surveillance, sometimes the investigating agencies or the police uses the phones to be tapped. For that, the law says that the police has to give a request through the DCP of the area, and that request has to be approved by the secretary level officer of the state, and in the center by the any IS officer who is the secretary secretary level officer, and that can only be done on the ground of national security or terrorism or friendly interests with the neighboring states. So these are very limited grounds on which surveillance is possible. So I am sure even if this law, when it comes into it comes to be implemented, there will be
So Ashish
adequate check
Dixit,
and balances.
this social
which will be taken
communication
care
show,
of.
social media communications hub that the government is going to create under the IB ministry, what law will this come under?
Another thing. See, all ministries do not work completely, aloof from each other. Information broadcasting ministry is collecting this data or has mooted this proposal, and eventually it will come to Home Ministry and to PMO for implementation. It is not something. See, somewhere the thing has to start. It's not that the IB ministry will be the sole in charge till the end. If it is a law and order matter, or if it is a matter which concerns law and order, obviously it will come through the Home Ministry and the cabinet.
No, you've already floated a
it.
tender. The government has already floated a tender in this case. So I'm very curious. I can see Ramanjit Singh
tender
Chima
is floated to see whether it is possible. See
To
tomorrow,
see whether it's possible.
if none of the companies come forward or none of the individual come forward to say it is to say it is possible, obviously this falls flat. So first we have to see whether this is possible,
Ramanjit Singh,
and then only
Singh,
it will
please go
be
ahead.
reaching the next stage.
Ramanjit Singh.
No, I think that to put it across completely correctly, Faye, there is no law right now on this point. This has been a tender issued by the Ministry for Information and Broadcasting with very unclear initiation. As you know, in the government, when anything is done, like files are drafted, a policy paper is put together, and civil servants know very well if something is authorized under the law. And if someone today is on a TV discussion telling me that this is going to be eventually used by the Ministry of Home Affairs and eventually by the Prime Minister's office and others, I think that would be concerning, correct? That's why this needs to be clarified right now. And this has unfortunately not been clarified today. Let's give the benefit of the doubt to the Ministry for Information and Broadcasting. Maybe they're doing this for correct purposes, but they have not answered this. For example, back in June itself, the group that I am one of the members of, the Internet Freedom Foundation, sent a notice to the Ministry for Information and Broadcasting asking them, saying this seems to be concerning, please stop this tender, please explain under what legal process this is taking place, what safeguards are you undertaking to protect people's privacy, and no answer was provided there. And in a context where everyone knows Indian surveillance law does not work, for example, a certain state government, I won't name it, happened to issue 15,000 phone tapping orders within 1 month because they were trying to curb on potatoes being dropped at district administration offices. It just indicates what sort of checks and balances that are there. Everyone who's in the system knows it's broken and problematic as it exists. And today, instead, we're turning public money, the treasure that the citizens of India pay taxes to contribute to create a large, massive surveillance project with no clear intent as to who's going to run it.
Yes.
What is going to be used for, how does it respect existing legal standards, and where is this data going to? It is
in fact, let me point something out to you. Let me point something out to you, and I'm going to go to Kumar Srivastav for this because he's reported on this story from the very beginning. And Kumar, this is what I find interesting. Initially, when the story broke, the first representative of the government of the BJP on this particular program said, no, we're not actually going to do this. There's no real plan. This is just a tender. This is not actually something we're going to do. The second person we spoke to said this is just because the government wants feedback on its own, programs that it's running right now. So, for example, the Swachh Bharat program, they want to know whether it's working or not. It's like any other organization that would want feedback. Now we have someone from the government who's telling us this is to stop lynching. So the government representatives themselves, or the people speaking to us on this show, have not been clear between each other what this is for. Kumar.
That's absolutely true, Faye. As Raman has pointed out, when they sent a notice, they didn't get a response. Even while I was reporting this story, I sent a detailed email asking about clarifications about everything. I did not receive any response from the ministry. And connecting to what you're saying, how opinions are changing, even to respond to one of the panelists who said that few things, like one thing that he said, there's a fundamental difference between Cambridge Analytica and this project where there was a private party doing work for politicians. Here it's government doing transparently. I would like to say that this is even more concerning because in the tender itself there is no clarity where this data is gonna feed. What is the surety that the connected political party may not be using this data? Do we have law to protect this? Do we have clause in the tender to protect this? We don't right now. And when we're talking about policies, obviously in campaigning, this is what policies of the government and political parties are obviously most of the times are connected. Second thing, about the transparency that the government has put it out in public domain. A lot of times what happens is you say, as you have also pointed out, Faye, that there have been all kind of opinions about that this would be used to stop lynching and other things. They project a picture. I mean, the tender itself, if you just look at a glance, you won't really know that what exactly this tender means unless you read the fine print of it. And this, in fact, interestingly, this tender was in the public domain for over a month. Nobody, including the opposition party, picked it up, found what was wrong with this, what was in the fine print. So then that's where, once you read it properly, you get to know that these could be the threats,
Yes.
or concern about privacy or about legal concerns about this. And this is what exactly the Supreme Court has today noticed, that there is a valid legal question in this, and that's why they have issued notices to the government on this.
Well, Mr. Nandakishore Garg of the BJP is still on the phone line. Mr. Garg, there has been no clear mandate for this entire project. Could you tell us from inside the IB ministry, what is this project for? What is the aim of putting together a cell or a social media communications hub that will monitor all the Indian citizens who are on social media?
I think they are monitoring only the unsocial media, not the social media. And these things are very in the initial stages. Even I don't know the much detail of it. I have just heard today itself from your channel and participating, but I'm sure only unsocial media, so-called uncontrolled people should be checked. It is the only intention. And every other concern, I think it is unfounded. Privacy and transparency are the opposite thing. And we have to balance both things. When we are concerned about transparency and we are concerned about privacy. And both concerns are justified, but there has to be some checks and balances for national security, for the law and order, for the privacy of the person. These should be maintained. There is no doubt about it, and I am for it. But we should not be unnecessarily concerned about the things which are not so much clear, not to me, not even to only to few experts. I think the time will, in a 10 days, 15 days, these things will be clear. And I am fully convinced that Mr. Dixit is telling us the facts. And we are all, I am fully convinced that Mr. Dixit is proposing the things in a right way. And other people are also should study these things. And if there is something wrong, it should be corrected. And for that, government is always open. It's a democratic setup, but these are not.
But in fact, Mr. Garg, you're confidently saying that the government is always open. It's a democratic setup on a day when the Supreme Court on this very matter has said you're setting up a surveillance state, which is the opposite of a democratic setup.
If something is wrong, it will be corrected. I can assure all the people that if there is something wrong, it will be corrected. But it is in a very initial stage. Even the times of the tenders, who has read the panelists sitting over here, only I think Dixit must have read, or the, I think, expert, our cyber expert must have read. Otherwise, that's we are hearing something and we are reacting on it. That this, the country, the media is just reacting to things even without studying. I think we should be balanced. We should study more and then study.
Right. In fact, let me take this to Ashish Dixit. Ashish Dixit, you were just defending, the government's move, and I have this question for you. No one has a clear idea of what this is for, including the representative of the BJP on this panel. How could we defend this now? We can only defend something if we know what it is for, if we know the purpose for which the government is doing this. It's not clear in the tender that is put out. There's no clear plan. They have not invited opinions of citizens. They have not put out a press release. They have not answered any of our questions as a government. All we know is what is in the tender. Nobody knows what this entire media cell or the social media communications hub is for. Why are you defending it?
No, no. I am not defending the BJP. I am trying to defend the government and the government's power and the right to deal with the law and order situation and to make policies. I am not here for BJP, please understand, and I am glad that the BJP representative is not aware, because technically he is not supposed to be aware of this thing, because it is a matter of the government. The BJP spokesperson or any party member has no right to be aware about it. He can be as aware as I am. The thing is,
Which, no,
as of now, it's
as
just
a citizen he should know. As a citizen, none of us know.
Please, please.
As a citizen, none of us know, Ashish Dikshit.
No, because nothing has happened as of now. See, nothing has happened. It's a tender which has been made. Let parties come forward who are willing to do it. Let's see what is the mandate which is given by the government. What are the duties? And you think that any change in law and any this kind of thing can be implemented without taking public comments or without taking any opinion from the stakeholders? This is not the way a law has to be implemented, because if this is the manner the government is going to function, this law will be set aside. And I'm also surprised at the petition which has been filed in the Supreme Court, because as of now there is no cause of action. Why that petition has been filed? It is only a speculative thing that this may have this effect, this may have that effect. You don't file petitions on the speculation. And secondly, I'm also relying upon a Supreme Court observation with regard to this PILs. See, the petitioner before the Supreme Court is an active member of a political party. The Supreme Court has very clearly told us recently that politicians should be very careful while filing PILs. I am not sure whether this aspect has been pointed out in the PIL which has been filed. Justice Chandrachud, who has observed today, was one of the judges who had made this observation in the judgment of Judge Loya case, that the politicians should stay away from
No, Ashish Dikshit, let me point out to you. Let me point out to you. 1 second. Ashish Dikshit, well played. But you started off this discussion saying that the Supreme Court just made an observation of a surveillance state today. We shouldn't actually harp on it so much. But now you want to take another observation seriously when you said the Supreme Court observed that politicians shouldn't be filing PILs. We should treat both observations then equally, and then let's go back to talking about how the government is creating a surveillance state.
Faye, that observation was part of a judgment. It's in black and white. What is reported as of now is an oral observation, which is not part of any order. The observation on which I am relying upon is a part of the judgment passed by 3 judges of Supreme Court. It's the law of the land.
I just want to submit one thing here, and I can see Rahul Singh has a point to make. Rahul Singh, we are currently at tender process. The tender was out a month ago. Now, it's impossible to put out a tender unless you have a concrete proposal that's gone in, that's been accepted by the minister or by the secretaries, and then the tender goes out. To tell us that there's a tender that's gone out but nothing is really decided is actually not true. Is it true? Rahul Singh.
No, I won't agree that, there is no decision at all. It is an experiment. It might be an experiment, but might be a very thoughtful and designed experiment. But I would take this opportunity to answer one of the questions which you raised, and some of the panelists debated on that. Why is it not managed by Ministry of Home Affairs? See, in Ministry of I&B, we usually have TV media, radio, print media. This is all already regulated. Social media is something which is not regulated. For some reason, there is always an editor in any of the media. There is no editor in social media. There is a publisher, authenticity and identity in any of the media we are talking about, but there is usually none or not traceable in social media. There is a very strong case why government should do it. Supreme Court has said, please be cautious that you don't become surveillance state. Please remember, in October 2017, I did a research and I found the same bench also said that there was misuse of social media platform and people disseminated wrong information.
We seem to have lost that connection there with Rahul Singh, but I'm going to give the last word to Ramanjit Singh. Ramanjit Singh, there is a problem of lynching in our country. There is a problem. WhatsApp messages are costing us lives at this point in the most brutal fashion. But is this the solution to that problem?
No, I think the point, as you mentioned, is that law and order failures are causing these problems for the country. And if, for example, particular examples of social media, communications tools, the internet are encouraging that, then investigate that. But do that under a proper process of law. And frankly, do it under an improved process of law. The reality is, again, in this country is that we have one of the few major democracies in the world which does not have a federal national level privacy statute, which still allows bureaucrats to sign off on wiretap orders, for bureaucrats to review these wiretap orders and for all of this to be kept confidential. Judges are not involved. You need to fix that. And the reality today is if you put constant surveillance on everyone, on every single social media post that someone makes, it is designed, and even if it's not designed to, it will have a chilling effect on speech and expression. It will have a chilling effect on your rights of association. So the point is that can only happen in limited cases where someone is breaking the law. Empower people and create the tools, but be open about it. I think, as you've pointed out, Faye has come across this panel multiple times, no one knows the purpose of this. And